She's walking outside.
Oh, she is. Okay, so if it's all right with everyone, we'll just give it a few seconds so that she can catch her breath and come on in so she can participate. And then we will get started. But the meeting is open. So welcome. Hank, thank you again for being here and doing this. For your service and being here. And Amy, who just rushed from another meeting. This is our extra special meeting. So thank you for doing that and getting materials out for us. We do really appreciate that. I'm just going to take a quick moment. Our last meeting was a little bit stressful, and I have been thinking and reflecting a lot about our last meeting, and I had the privilege this week of watching my children perform, and when they came off of where they were performing, one of their teachers from Jackson Grammar School was waiting for them, and one of the teachers who worked at Lilliputian Montessori School was waiting for them. And we also happened to this week go out to get pizza, and there was another one of their teachers who was working. And I'm sharing that because it is very easy in these meetings to forget the wonderful work that our teachers do and why we do the work here. And I think it's a very big privilege to be sitting on this side of the table. But I'm going to just share with you that it has been highly stressful for me since I joined the board again. And I would like to just ask folks to all try to be our very best selves, because I think our kids deserve it. I think those teachers who have served our children deserve it. And I do try to do that. I appreciate when people call me out and I don't do it. I will take responsibility for it the way I did last time. And so with that, I'm going to get the meeting started. But we have a very important job to do. And so I hope you just keep all of these lovely educators in mind and all of the important work we have to do, and the people who run from meetings to be here, to be with us, and who stay late on days. Because we serve a lot of people and not just our own individual dreams and desires. So with that, I will share a letter that went out in our board packets. We are doing our best to get information out to everyone. And so with the board packets this week, we wanted to explain why we called this extra meeting this month. Those who attended the meeting or had a chance to watch the video or saw the minutes may have noticed that we have a pretty aggressive timeline and some very important goals that we've set on the High School Options Committee. And so we've worked at the behest of the board, and there was a feeling that we couldn't hit those markers and get the information we needed in time for people to really process them and to get the feedback we needed. And so I won't read the whole letter. It's in the packet. It will go out in the minutes. People will have it. It's not super detailed. Other than that, it is a reminder that our contract with Kennett has ended, and we are assessing both Freiburg and Kennett High School. A rubric has been created. That rubric is available for folks to look at. There will be links. We just confirmed with the High School Options Committee that they will make sure it's available on websites and things like that. And we also wanted to make sure that people could give us feedback on that rubric, which we would really like to use. So obviously, please share feedback in these meetings. People have been very good about communicating with me directly, both via email, and you can always call me, you can stop me wherever we happen to be in our community. But there is a form that we have set up where you can share your thoughts. The only thing we want you to know is that that is a public information form. So when you share your information in that way, your identity and your comments will be shared. They become part of our public record. So, and we hope that you would want that to be shared anyway, because it's part of our civil dialogue, and we welcome all of it. I also wanted to just share that not only are we having these meetings, but we will have our August 19th meetings, which we'll confirm again at the end of tonight's meeting. So that's just an FYI. And our main agenda item tonight is to talk about the High School Options Committee and the progress that we just made in our last meeting. So with that, I will turn to that. And give you an update, and then I'll turn it over to the board so that we can just make sure that we're all on the same page and we can keep moving forward. So, and we have folks here that were in that meeting, so if I missed something or you want to add something, please go ahead and do that. At the last school board meeting, we talked about me being point person and getting moving on establishing contact and seeing whether Freiburg and Kennett were interested in working with us. And they're both eager to start conversations, so we have meetings set up with them tomorrow, July 30th at 2 o'clock. I'll be meeting with Joseph Manning from Freiburg, Michael, it's Cortez, right? Did I say Cortez. How do I keep doing that? It's because I read it more. Cortez, who's on our committee, will be joining me, and then the Conway School Board will also be meeting. I'll also be meeting with them. They have put together their own people, and my understanding is that will be Ryan Wallace, Mike DiGregorio, and Randy Davison. I'll be meeting with them at 5:30 at the Professional Development Center, and my understanding is that will be sort of just our introductory meeting, and my hope there is to establish contact. And obviously we know these folks from our community, right? We're all neighbors. We're in a general sense, but to just kind of let them know where we're at in our process and to kind of establish how we're going to be moving forward. And part of it is I also wanted to give them an opportunity to speak, because I think a lot of people have been waiting, and that was where I would like to start. But I also wanted to make sure substantively I was prepared and really working at the behest of the school board with a concrete way to gather information that we could bring back to taxpayers and to the board, so that we're all transparent. It's a fair process to both schools, and it will be a way that we can present it to people for decision making. So with that, we have this rubric that hopefully everyone has had a chance to review. There was discussion at our last meeting, both on the committee side, not tonight, but the earlier July meeting, there was discussion about the committee meeting and the school board meeting, that the rubric was well done and detailed, and it might be helpful to sort of have what I'm currently thinking of as sort of like initial questions, or sort of a one-pager that would be helpful in just the first contact, getting information so that we know whether it's even possible to move forward with an option. And so that's the first tab of this rubric. And that is sort of just, are you interested? What would costs look like? Or some of the, you'll see on the rubric there is a column for projected source of information. Obviously, things like the special education budget or the transportation budget, we can get that information ourselves. We're not going to be looking to those schools, those districts and the school to necessarily give that to us. But with that, I'll also say, aside from the information just from the school, one thing I felt was very important is it would be good for us to look at projections and to look a little bit at the historical information about what has been going on. And personally, I would also just like to know, what have our costs actually been? So I know we can find them, I've been paying attention, but to just have them in one place that's easily accessible for people, so that when they can look at it, it will just be easy for people to understand and wrap their brain around what's happening. So with that, I will turn it over to the board, because I'm just looking to make sure that that you're in support, and the committee recommended that we use this rubric as a way to compile all the information, and basically approved it as a way to just move forward and kind of authorize me to just get going with it.
I think from my standpoint, because I know you just had a meeting, it'd be great to know what kind of came out of that meeting versus coming in as the board and saying, hey, here are thoughts. Like, is there new information? Are there new recommendations that those of you who were inside of that committee meeting have?
Yeah, the basic, Michael, I'd love to give you voice here. Would you like to
go for it?
Yeah.
To be clear, Mike, not to sing the you were pretty much the only one not here aside from.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I was blocked by the retry.
Oh yeah, no.
Sorry. No, I'm just giving you context.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone's like, I already know what happened. What about you? I was not, I didn't have to be there. So.
Basically looking out of that meeting was,
5 countertops blocked our driveway from then to my house, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm not going early.
Zoom, that's it.
It's fine.
Basically, what we were looking for, what I'm really looking for tonight, as the person who's going to be meeting with these folks, is that I'm looking for full support from the board and to know what the parameters are as far as moving forward, because there's already been concerns raised about what's a negotiation, what's not a negotiation, right? And in my mind, our job at this point, even though I've got one foot on the board and one foot in this committee, our task right now is to gather some information, and that's what I'm hoping to do. And this rubric is a vehicle for doing that. And so it would be ideal for me to leave here tonight with full confidence that the board thinks this is the way to do this. We would like to use this as a board for us to rely on. This is going to be the official way we will gather our information. We will rely on this information. That was what the committee put together and is endorsed basically to the board to say, yes, does every question in here have to get 100% answered? Not necessarily, and it won't get answered right away because, for example, we want to turn it over to the community to give feedback. So we might get another question that comes in before August 19th. And it's not that we want to keep running back and forth to schools, but this is going to be a weeks and months long process. So we're just getting started. We're just tipping our toe into these relationships that we're looking to develop, because whether we pick Freiburg, whether we pick Kennett, whether we pick another option, these are people that we are in a very small battle with, and we want to make sure that we are developing and keeping good relations with everyone, because ultimately what's going to serve our kids, it's going to be that they are able to feel good about spending time with anyone, whether they go to their school or not. And I certainly would never want anyone on the Conway School Board or anyone in Freiburg to think that we didn't give them a full effort at understanding how we might work together. So
Thanks.
do you want to add anything to that?
No. So rubric is approved as our vehicle, I think, or recommended by the high school board. Community feedback over the next couple of weeks, finalized by August 19th, whatever the next meeting is.
Yeah.
But it's already well on its way and we can probably start sharing it.
Great.
Answers to that over the next month and a half, give or take, once it's in the hands of the schools. Ideally, that's up to them. And then once we have those answers, some sort of follow-up meeting with the high school options committee, potentially board. There's still some things to iron out there to make sure that all the questions are appropriately answered. Right? You can't answer everything necessarily in 2 sentences. There may need to be discussion about things. And then goal is to have. Oh, and then the last part also was we went back and forth around having a community presentation by Freiburg Academy and Cage and Kennett or Conway, whichever one. What is the right term?
Yeah, so I'll get into it. So it would be, I think it would either be the Conway School Board or the Kennett High School, whoever wants to, we'll let them decide whatever they want to do. But that is something I would like to get into because I think it's a new concept to some of you. One of the things Michael talked about.
Yeah, can I just finish and come back? So like some sort of, potentially that's still an open discussion, there was some discussion around that one, around having them come in and do a presentation directly to the community. Of course, we're doing this process, but to help engage the community more, they might want to just ask questions directly too. With a recommendation to the school board in that October-November timeframe, so that there's, I think Jerry brought this up last time, you need to have time to do actual negotiations and make sure that there's time for budgeting with approval ideally in March at the town meeting. I think that was the general gist, right? Did I miss anything?
Yes, and just a few nuances. One, the goal is to be aggressive about gathering information, but the hope is that we will be thoughtful about processing that information so that we still have plenty of time to ultimately make the decision, right? I mean, if it happens to move forward for this year, that's fine. If it goes forward to next year, we use this time to do what's right. But we definitely don't want to make it a last minute decision, and we don't want to be blocked into being forced into a decision that's not well thought out. So that's why the urgency is to get the information to people, to the stakeholders, the people who will ultimately be making the decision. And I want to keep saying this to everyone. There's a committee that is facilitating things. The board is going to be making a decision. We each get one vote, but the board is ultimately going to make the decision. But that, and negotiate a contract, right? Which then the townspeople will get to vote on, right? And then the state will have to approve. So there are many layers here of review, and we want to just give enough time for everyone to understand how it all works. If people have questions, we want them to be able to answer them. And you know, especially if you've been in it a bit, it's easy to just assume that everyone understands it. But I can tell you, in the last 4 weeks, a lot of people don't understand a lot of this. So the easier we can make it for people to just clarify things and get things out to them, the better I think it will be. So is everyone good? Can I keep it to okay. So the rubric was endorsed. We are hoping that that will be a guiding document that we can use to rely on. We will bring it, we will put it out to public presentations so that folks can digest it and give feedback on it. And then the other piece will be, as Michael said, we are hoping that it will be an enhancement to our process to invite the leaders of Kennet and or Conway School Board, the leaders of Freiburg, and another piece, because I had the opportunity to speak to the New Hampshire School Board Association this week. I threw this in, and Jerry and I actually agreed on this, having the New Hampshire School Board Association come in to do basically educational sessions with our people in our town so that families, taxpayers, our community members, our board, yes indeed our board can get educated as well, even though I guess, you know, I'll leave that. We all can come and hear directly from people, the people who know the information the best, what they're about. So ideally we will schedule those sooner rather than later, and we want to throw that out to see what people thought about that.
That sounds excellent. I'm fully in support of that, and having like a couple starter questions that we want to make sure, or topics that are covered, and then we have the New Hampshire School Board Association would be really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything they want to say about any of that? And if folks, I want to make sure that that the rubric is approved before we move forward, because this has been such a difficult process and it's been going on for so long. So I just want to hear from everyone.
So do we need to have a motion to approve it? Is that what we're looking for?
That would be most comfortable for me personally, but I'm going to go with the group. I mean, we're a board. It's not just me. So.
I mean, having been following along, not having been at those meetings, this looks excellent. It looks really thorough, maybe even scarily thorough. But I'm all for it if the committee thinks that this is what you're recommending. So I'm in full support of this being what we adopt and moving forward with it.
Okay. Great.
I'll make a motion to approve the rubric.
I'll second.
Okay. Any more discussion? Okay. So then all in favor? Great. Okay, thank you. Then I'd like to start to, what I'd like to do is basically just get to, start those initial conversations tomorrow, and, we'll be having our next meeting soon enough, so we'll just get things moving, get information coming back, and from there we can see where we go.
Great.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else on any of this relating to the high school options conversation? Yes.
So one of the reasons I like the idea of bringing in the New Hampshire School Board Association so much is because I think the board needs to learn and understand what our contract options are, what open enrollment is, when we talk about school choice, what does that really mean? Well, the law defines what it means. We should have an understanding now what that means, and we don't. And so one of the things I wonder is, when is this board going to talk about those types of things so that we understand how to develop a contract, how to talk to Conway? When is this board going to make the determination about, to me, transporting our kids to high school is an important function of the school district. And I'd like to have a conversation about that, because I have lots of parents coming to me saying that if we don't bus our kids to high school, they can't live in this town. So when is this board going to have that conversation about transportation and how we transport our kids to high school?
Whenever you'd like, Jerry, if you'd like to get that on as an agenda item. Last month I offered you the option to speak to us about whatever you'd like. I would love for you to set some direction or take some leadership here, so please, by all means, get that going. As far as my understanding from our previous conversations, I think all of us felt that in the name of equity, we felt that that was something that we felt we needed to offer to folks, and that we had to explore what those costs would be associated with it. So if I'm misunderstanding what's happened with previous conversations,
So I
please
guess
let me
what
know.
I mean by that, Jess, is like, so the way I look at it, how do we bus our, if we choose Freiburg Academy as our school of choice or our school of record, how are we going to bus them there?
I don't know, Jerry, because we don't have any information yet.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, the information comes from us. It's who we
No,
people talk about that.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
I don't
That's
agree
that's
with you.
that's the part that
I can
confuses
tell you,
me
Jerry, I was the
entirely.
one who spoke with Freiburg Academy in two previous iterations of this situation, ever since the initial email that my husband and I sent to the school board 2 years ago. So what I can tell you is that there's more than one way to get students to Kennett, to get students to Freiburg Academy. And so I think we have an obligation to know what all of the ways to do that would be, what all of the costs would be, and what all of the consequences would be. Because in my understanding of things, educating ourselves about those particularities and being thoughtful about them makes us responsible and gives us the best way to make a decision. James.
When do we talk about it?
James.
I agree with Jerry that I think that having the option of transportation for parents and families is an important aspect of equity. And I'm also sort of curious about learning more about how we transport and what the options are and what the costs are. I did a little bit of homework ahead of this meeting, and I noticed that it's really only 10 miles from Kennett to Freiburg, and the same student population would be on the bus, whether they're going to Kennett or going to Freiburg, presumably. And so it seems to me that it shouldn't be an insurmountable obstacle to put together some proposals and some numbers, and I'd be happy to work on that. If there's somebody who wants to join me, that'd be great. And you can reach out to me privately or right now. But I'm happy to see what options exist and what the cost would be and what would the impact be related to the school schedules and things like that.
First of all, thank you. I'd like to point out two things. One, the rubric that we're using actually indicates that the school board is meant to do that. So Jerry has already explained he has not looked at the rubric. He's not using the rubric. But we now have said that we will use the rubric. So if you could use that, that would be great.
Sure.
And if you could coordinate perhaps with Michael or with the committee so that we definitely don't want to be working at cross purposes. I want to just back up. So to clarify, I think we're all in agreement. The conversation has been ongoing. I mean, every time we've ever talked about transportation for 2 years, it's been that the ideal is that we are providing transportation. We are not actually legally responsible to do that, but I think we all have felt that that would be in our students' best interest. But there is also the important piece of it, which is we have to know what that will mean. Even with Conway, we have to understand what that will mean and what those costs will look like. So that is part of what this information is, and getting it up in a document for people for this next contract. Let me just make one other comment, and then I'll come to you, James. I also do want to point out that as far as understanding things, Kevin Richards sent out an advisory of interest, and I'm going to comment on it here in a public meeting again, because I'd like it to go into our minutes so that everyone has it, and we'll make sure that there's a link to it. Back in December of 2023, a fantastic advisory went out to all SAU 9 board members exploring tuition options for school districts. It is a 17-page document, so it is not super long. It is very well written in that they actually highlight takeaways so that anyone who's reading it can, if you don't understand all of the legal pieces of it, you can read the paragraph, and that can give you an understanding of, okay, well, what does this mean? And I do agree with you, Jerry. We're limited in scope in many ways, which is why I'm not particularly concerned as far as gathering this information, but that's a very helpful document for people. So I think we actually do have a lot of information that is going to be guiding us. And, so I just want to make sure that that's there because we do have all of this. We have actually spoken about it. We've gotten the information from the people who are experts. James.
And then just another piece to share with the room that I learned is it's been mentioned before today, but I was interested to learn that our current contract with Kennett doesn't account for transportation costs, and so the Jackson school board budgets separately, and the town of Jackson funds transportation as a separate line item. And so another thing that makes me feel as though the question of whether we can transport students to either of the high schools or both of the high schools, I'm further encouraged by the fact that if we're transporting 20 high school students, it seems to me that, or we're budgeting to transport 20 high school students because we all know that many of them don't take the bus. It seems to me that the impact on the budget to transport them an additional 20 miles a day should not be something that this group of people can't take on and find a way to solve.
Jerry.
So I'm just going to propose that if we were to send our kids to Freiburg Academy as the high school of record, we would have to buy another bus and hire another bus driver. I don't see how else we would do it given when our middle school starts, when Freiburg Academy starts, and when our grammar school starts. I don't know how you do that with 2 buses and 2 bus drivers.
Well,
And
I'll come back to the board with some numbers and some suggestions, and maybe we can talk about the specifics at that point.
In keeping with that, would someone be interested in the other piece of information I think is going to be critical for us is the special education budget, because that's actually that's another piece that's outside of our contract. But we actually, when we a lot of times we'll say special education, but special education can be broken down into a number of items. Extended school year, supplies, special placements, contracted services, things like that. And I think the better we can understand that and clarify what that means, regardless of where we send our kids, I think we can have a better discussion. Yes?
And I think that's the kind of information that would be really helpful coming from the New Hampshire School Board Association. Because, there's no confusion. Most people aren't confused by these things. So if this board is, we need to have someone come and address it to us.
Mm-hmm. What's the confusion? Sorry.
That's what I don't understand either.
But can you explain what you're seeing as the confusion? You're saying...
Well, Jess keeps bringing it up as though it's something we need to learn about, and that's what has me confused.
My understanding is that it's that we need to learn what the options are. If we go to Freiburg, here's what potential for special ed, and Kennett, here's what the potential is. Am I correct on that, Jess?
Yeah.
So we need to be looking at both policies, not if we're confused if special ed is something that we need to be offering. I think that's very clear. It's more, what does this look like in each of these scenarios?
But they're the same in each scenario. That's what's confusing me.
But I don't think they would be because they're different institutions.
But how we would utilize special ed services would virtually be the same no matter which institution it was. In other words, but that's not going to be like our option to necessarily negotiate out or have different scenarios with. It's pretty straightforward.
So an example, in one of our previous iterations, we had at one point an in-house person that worked at the high school, at Kennett High School. They were able to be a cost-effective support person compared to what they would have been to support a child at Freiburg Academy. So when you look at the budget for that particular role, it would have been less expensive to send a student to Kennett High School versus sending them to Freiburg because of the special education budget line item for that particular student, because of the particulars of how Kennett worked at that time.
Right.
Today, I don't know what that would mean, but I think we can do our best to get an idea of what the landscape looks like right now and whatever the projections would be. I think it's fair for us to get those numbers for people, because I don't even know if people understand what those mean and whether there is wiggle room or not. At the time, there was certainty from leadership at various places that mattered. So I am not a special education expert, but I do believe in going to the people who know the best and relying on them instead of on my own opinion for things like this.
If it's helpful, another example that occurs to me is one of the schools uses remote speech therapists because they don't have a large enough enrollment to have a speech therapist on site. And for some parents, that might be a relevant data point as compared with a school that doesn't use remote services, especially for certain special needs kids who might find a remote environment unhelpful.
A comparison of special ed services is different than what special ed services would be offered. So that's a good way to describe that distinction. I just wanted to kind of clarify that we understand the fact that when it comes to in-house special ed services, both schools would provide some extent of in-house special ed services.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit different at Kennett than it's going to be at Freiburg,
Right.
but when it comes to out of district, meaning like they don't have the facilities to handle that particular student, out of district special ed service costs will be, those costs will be borne by the Jackson School District, whether they're in Freiburg Academy or in Kennett High School. I don't know if we all understand that or not, and if we do, to me that there's no confusion about that. It's just the comparison school to school, what kind of special ed services does one school have to another. That's a valid comparison to me.
Maybe that's just the language that you're not hearing, Jerry, because my understanding is the comparison is exactly what we're looking for doing. Is it like, how would this play out in each of these places and what's the comparison? Not, do they exist, do we need them? It's, what is the comparison of them? And the same thing with the transportation. Like, what does it look like for transportation here? What does it look like for transportation with Freiburg and with Kennett? So it's the comparison piece, not, is it available, would we do it? Does that, I mean, that's how I view this whole process.
It was helpful for me to hear that sometimes there are services that are outside of what happens inside the school that then the town would pay extra for. That's going to happen regardless of whatever school we go to.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm pushing so hard to get information down in front of people, because it's hard to wrap your brain around it with all of this talk. If we can give people something to respond to and they can see it, then they can say, oh, well, you're missing something. I don't understand this. I want to ask this question, including us,
Yeah.
right?
And the only other thing I would add is that Kennett High School is in our special ed service program. In other words, it's not that it would be seamless from one to the other, but we have control over that and say into that. We do not have that in Freiburg Academy at all. In other words, it would be going from one in which that special ed student is receiving services from the same group of people all the way through until they get to high school, and then that group of people would change. Because the state of Maine has different laws in regard to that. They have different resources. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying it would be a change from 8th grade to 9th grade, how those special ed services would be handled for each of the individual students in-house.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I can toss this to you, Amy, and you don't have to answer it right now, but maybe you can think on it for us. What would be the best way to get information on, for example, Conway, if we wanted to gather that? Because James has now volunteered to do transportation. If we wanted to do something for special education, and I'm not saying you do it, or we have to find someone right now, but what would be the best way to do that?
So when we say gather information about transportation,
Or special ed, I was thinking of, but
either though, I mean, are we talking about, I mean, ultimately both special ed and transportation are not in the tuition contract that's funded by Jackson School Board operating budget or special education budget. So the information about transportation is whether or not you're willing to do that on your own.
Right.
So other than school start times and how, supervision of students might occur in one building or another based on the difference of 10 miles traveling from one place. I'm not exactly certain what information we're trying to gather here, similarly to special education. So, I mean, you're obligated to provide special education services for students who qualify under an individualized education plan. I would agree with Jerry that that perhaps is delivered differently from school to school. So to understand how special ed services are delivered, what does that look like? What kind of model is being used at one location versus another? I mean, I would go directly to the Director of Student Services in each of those districts. You know, when it comes to a Jackson student, you know, it's who is the LEA responsible for oversight of provisions of programming. Something kind of similar happens right now in Chatham, that students go to Freiburg, but SAU 9 is still responsible for being the LEA to those students in their special education services, which means that that's part of the agreement that Chatham School Board, you know, funds some of that. So, I mean, it depends on how you choose to operate. But as far as information gathering about special education service provision or models of service provision, your Director of Special Services in both districts will be able to assist with that. As far as transportation, I mean, Freiburg Academy is not going to provide transportation for Jackson students, I wouldn't assume. Similarly, Conway's not going to charter a bus to Jackson, you know, or whatever. So that would be, would fall on the shoulders of the school board to figure out.
Okay, so just to clarify, an LEA is, just for folks who don't know.
Licensed educational agent.
Thank you.
So someone who oversees special ed programming to ensure that the language of what is legally binding in a student's plan is actually being delivered.
Okay, and then, and you just said that there are students in Chatham that go to Freiburg, but they get special education services through SAU 9?
No, they receive special education services through MSAD 72, but SAU 9, Director of Special Services, acts as the LEA at all of those meetings. So oversight of special ed provision programming, essentially,
Okay,
which comes at a cost to the district.
got it. Okay, thank you. Because you're a member of the public at the moment, and because you're capable. Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone else have anything else? Okay, so at this point, we are good to go with the rubric, getting moving. James is going to get moving on adding to that rubric. I think we're at the point now where we're just going to try to get as much information as possible. Yes?
Just for clarity's sake for the public or for folks who are going to read the minutes, where can people find the rubric?
I will, what I'm doing, Amy, is I'm sending you links. That Bradley Kidder document I referred to, I have for you. That was the tuition options that was sent out this summer. I'll also make sure that you have the feedback form and I will give you both the link and the actual full address so that you have it. And my understanding is at the committee meeting was that should be up on our high school options page. Erin, maybe you'll help us put it up as well.
Yep.
So we'll try to get it out as many places as we can. I will try to send out something to the e-news as well with links for people. I'll make a note to do that. And if folks, it should be shareable, so if folks want to do that, please. And people can also reach out to me. If people have difficulty accessing that, I will make sure that we have, basically what you can do is you can call me. I will come and listen to you and I will write it down. Feedback does not have to go through that form for it to be valid. That's just one way to contact the school board to provide feedback. So you can always call us, you can always come to a meeting, you can stop us in the grocery store, whatever you want to do. If anyone knows of someone who cannot access us through any of those forms, please let me know. I will happily go and meet with someone if they need extra assistance to be able to communicate with us. That's how important I think it is that we hear from everyone. Jared.
One of the reasons I haven't read the rubric is because every time I hit the link to it, nothing happens, and I've always assumed that was my end, meaning like I don't know how to do it. Because every time I've seen it in documents, I wanted to go look at it. Every time I've hit the links for it, it just nothing occurs.
You're not able to get it?
And I can't open it.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying, like, every time
I couldn't open it from the agenda. I had to go to the email you sent to the board today.
Okay.
I did that one night.
See, and I figured that's what I had to do too, I just wasn't going through
And
the
then
extra
it's
stuff
hard to
together.
read because it's all sideways.
It's
I
sideways.
Yeah.
I did see a sideways version of it
Yeah.
once, and I didn't want to read it, so.
It's tricky.
It's not anymore.
Well, we'll make
Okay.
sure that everyone's got that right now.
Yeah.
Amy, maybe before you leave tonight, I'll send this to you now so that you can make sure that it works. And I'll copy you, Erin, maybe.
There's no paper copies here now.
I think I printed out 10 of them. I don't know. I think I handed them to someone. We can maybe print out some of them in the library and maybe,
That's a great idea.
yeah. So, is there anyone that heads to the library at any? Would you mind doing that?
Happy to.
Okay, great. And just.
You're gonna give me the copy though, I'm not gonna have to go find it.
I don't mind doing that. And just so that people know, basically, the form just says, what type of feedback is this? Comment, question, criteria request, and then feedback. And then your name and whether you're a Jackson resident or not. Because this is public information. It does matter whether you're a resident or not. And we do want names because it's public record. So obviously people can make a choice about what they put in there. But after talking with the School Board Association, we felt that that would be the best practice for this type of information gathering. So, and anything else? So I will send to the E-News and Melinda. We'll get together and give you
Yeah.
copies.
And
So,
I think if you want to just, test out, it sounds obvious, but test out the link and make sure that it's public and that Google Docs is funny about that, but it's view versus edit, and maybe try it out to a couple people who have not been added to it to make
Yeah, I
sure that
think
we're flying on it.
I'll definitely double check that for
Yeah.
today. I think anyone with the link should be a viewer.
Yep.
So I'm not sure what the issue is. We have other people. Anyone else have anything? Or can I turn it over to citizen comments? Okay. So what we'll do is Michael had his hand up and then we'll turn to you, Mr. Doherty. Yes, Michael.
Sure, just on the special education item, maybe something to think about is figuring out what are all the activities that live under special education, and then creating a simple spreadsheet that's like, you do, we do concept, right? You do is like, let's say Conway School District, these are the things we provide, we do are these things. And just quickly, I literally just opened this year's budget, and I was just trying to go through the line items really fast, but it looks like it's things you already talked about, right? Like speech services, I don't know what psychological testing is, that may be one of them you all probably know better. Guidance services and transportation are the four that I could quickly find in the budget itself. So just something to think about.
Okay. Mr. Doherty.
I just have a comment on the motion to accept the rubric. That means nothing to me. I wonder why whatever the rubric is wasn't part of the motion. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? All right. I don't think we have a non-public this evening. So with that, if anyone has anything else?
Make a motion.
Could we just make one quick comment? I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just pointing to her because I just spoke to Erin about, I wanted to follow up on our goal setting session because I didn't want people to think I had forgotten about that. So if I could just take a moment. It's been on my mind. Obviously, I've had my hands full with some other things, but I wanted an opportunity to talk to the New Hampshire School Board Association about that because I reflected on last year's session and I've been thinking about our board and trying to figure out the best way for us to make the most of whatever time we have together. So we have some important work to do. There's already been a lot of work done by Erin and the district, and what I was hoping to do was share some information with folks that they could process ahead of time. But ideally what we would do is have a pretty highly structured time where we worked on creating our own goals for the year. Obviously we can utilize last year's goals. People could look at them, but I would really appreciate it if folks had a very good understanding of what our role is in this process. So I'd like to share information about what the best practices for that. And I know I keep using this phrase best practice, but it's important to me because I really want us to use evidence-based work. I want us to know what we're doing. We have a very bright board, and I know you all get caught up. We also have a new board in some ways, so I don't want you to feel like just because you haven't done this, we can't do it well. So with that, what I'm hoping for is to set a time of between, I think we could probably do what we need to do in about 2 to maybe 3 hours, depending on what we set our agenda as. And I'd like to set that agenda together, but obviously I can set that, I'll start it, but I would like to hear input from you. So if you have ideas that you'd like to add for the agenda, for example, I've already got it on my list to add the idea of middle school and how to approach that, because we've been asked to do that, and I think that is a bigger piece of what we need to do. I know Jerry had talked about how that might be a good piece of this. The other thing is we might work better if we've got an independent person moderating for us and sort of helping us and having a facilitator. So the New Hampshire School Board Association offers those services. Those are not free, so we would need to put money towards that. I'm sure we could find a community member who would participate as well. My only interest would be in having someone who doesn't have a vested interest in any piece of it. I just want them to be neutral. But I wanted to hear from you all, and we can either do that tonight or if you want to bring it back. But I wanted to ask you in terms of what you thought about process and also time, because we need to find a time to do that. So ideally it would be sort of, Erin was lovely and gracious and said the end of August would be fine to do that, because I wanted us to all be in person, or we could do it in September. Obviously the timing is off, but that's just how our schedules have worked, and I don't think it's going to matter because we've got plenty of work to do. But so content, format, and time. If folks want to think about it and get back, that's fine. Or if you want to jump in real quick, please do so. We still have time.
Jessica, I have a question that I wanted to ask before we close the meeting.
Could we just finish this piece and then we'll turn it over to citizen comments?
Okay,
please?
thank you.
Thank you.
If you're thinking about the end of August, we should probably talk now and throw out some times, because otherwise it won't happen.
Great. Would the last week of August work for folks? Like the 28th, 29th, or 30th? Like a 2-hour period?
So that's
I could only do the 29th.
Why wouldn't we just try for the Monday, since we always meet on Mondays?
I'm not in town on that Monday.
Okay. Wednesday, the 28th is fine with me.
Can you do that, Micah? Or
I can't do the 28th. And are we talking about an evening?
I think I can be flexible. It would depend on you all.
I can be flexible.
It's the after 3:30 p.m. on the 29th would be easier, though with this much notice I can move things around if everybody else is going to jam.
Okay. Could you do the 29th, Jerry and Melinda?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I should be able to make whatever anybody else can. So.
Okay. What time would work best for folks? I'm pretty flexible that day. I don't know.
Maybe we can just do a 5 to 7 with a hard stop at 7.
I think we can make that work. Okay. So let's set that for August 29th. Does that work for you, Ann?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just to know, there's something scheduled in the Whitney at 4:30 on the 29th, so we'd have to meet in here.
Okay. I'll check.
That's what we did our last goal setting
Yeah.
session.
Okay.
So 8:29. Okay. So 5 o'clock to 7 p.m.
I think what's most important for me in terms of goal setting is that we use goal setting as a placeholder when we didn't have a strategic plan.
Mhm.
Now we have a strategic plan, and Erin's been leading us in that strategic plan really well. So I want those things to dovetail. So maybe cart in front of the horse, like, Erin, is that something that you can come to us beforehand and say, hey, here's what I'm doing? Because I know that in our last goal setting, a lot of what we did as a board was say, we want to back Erin up with what she's working on. And I think that, which is, in my opinion, the marker of a good board and a board that's closely aligned with their principal. In this case, for how we're looking at what's happening with the grammar school. I know that's not the same as what's happening with the middle school and the high school, but I think around the grammar school piece that, Erin, if you can get us something a week before so that we can look at that.
And just let Jess know that just finished up monitoring tool, strategic plan monitoring
Cool.
tool. So it has all our goals, our action steps.
Great.
And then we can see it's color coded. This
Of course
is
it is.
done, or this is, I actually it was from Conway I took, because Conway and Bartlett use the same tool, but
Absolutely.
we didn't have it.
Mhm.
So I can finish that up.
Because I didn't want to put that all together when it was strategic planning time.
Okay.
And I thought it'd be great for the person who was going to run the strategic plan
Thank you.
to
So I
make
did
it
that.
happen.
I did that, and I will share it out,
Cool.
and we can also, when we get closer, share out what we worked on as far as our district goals at our retreat.
Wonderful, because I think that would be really important, that we're walking into it with that information to
Absolutely.
backstop you. Okay.
One observation that I have is when I sit with employees and we do goal setting, I try really hard to make sure that everybody reduces the number of goals. I think, with employees, I try to ask them to keep it to 3 goals for the year. And so, however we decide to do it, I guess my observation here is that if we can kind of make it succinct, it'll make it easier for us to check in on those goals periodically and make sure that we're successful.
Yeah, I mean, one hope I had is perhaps we could take whatever we come up with and align it to our agenda so that we can demonstrate that each month we're moving our agenda forward to align with those goals.
Yeah.
And maybe we even, So if folks have any thoughts on the session, please send them to me. I can work with Aaron to get information to people and ahead of time. And we will, we'll think about who might help us facilitate that night. Melinda?
I know I can go in and find them, but if you send me the strategic plan and the old goals, that would be awesome.
Definitely. I have links to all that, I'm sure. I know you do, because I think you sent it to me originally. So maybe if you're sending the Conway, if you're sending your updated,
Yeah.
would you share the other two with them and in one, with all of us in one document? Or what do you
More
know?
than willing to do that.
Okay, great. Okay, anyone else have anything else on that? Wonderful. Okay, last item, I just wanted to remind everyone, there is an executive, there's a meeting. This is August 1st at 5 o'clock down at the Conway Professional Development Center.
It's at 5 o'clock?
It is at 5 o'clock, so if folks can make it, it would be really wonderful for us to go down and just participate in this. The Conway School Board is really having a very difficult time, and I can tell you, I'm sure you've seen the paper, if you're reading the paper. It is just a very difficult time to be managing education in Conway right now, and they are not as supported by the public in some ways, and they just had the superintendent that was about to be approved walk away, and it's yeah.
Jess, that's our superintendent you're talking about. That's not Conway. This is the SAU 9 you're talking about.
I understand that, but it's their board, so
It's the SAU 9 board. It's not the Conway board at all.
okay.
I don't know. That's wow.
The Conway School Board is having a meeting, so I would like to just remind people to go to that meeting.
So the executive committee's meeting at 5, if I might, and then the SAU 9 board
Is
is
at 6.
at 6.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the Conway School Board.
Right.
At all.
It's all of SAU 9.
I actually did not say that. My point was that it would be really great if we can all go down and support, because I think it's a really difficult time for them. So
Who's them?
the
Conway?
people who have to make those decisions, the folks that I'm talking to right now, Jerry, they don't actually get a vote in that meeting.
Yes, they do. We do as a town. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm saying they're not there, they're not voting. So if we can go there and support what's happening, because we don't always get all Jackson board members there, Jerry. We're on the same team here. I don't know if you know that. I'm trying to encourage our full board to show up, which for years has not happened.
You just made the statement that Conway's having a problem with their superintendent. I don't know what you're talking about.
Jerry, I appreciate you'd like to fight with me personally, but we don't have a stored up conflict between us. I don't know why you feel you have to attack me, but let me just say this. It has been a rough, as I said before, many months with you. You've already gone after me in the last meeting. You attack me at every turn that you can. It is stressful for me. I'm sorry if I misspoke. What I was trying to say is that if you all could go down and support the board, because they're having a very difficult time, because they just had an awful thing happen, I would like to urge you to do that.
You keep saying they. That's us you're talking about.
Jerry, thank you. With that, I would like to turn it to you, Mrs. Doherty, because you wanted to speak.
First of all, I wanted to know, you're down to 2 schools. It's either Freiburg or Kennett, is that correct?
we can't really answer questions in this part of the,
Why not?
Can't, it's not a discussion.
Oh, okay. All right, then I'm just listening to what you're saying. You got it.
okay. I'm sorry about that, but I'm just trying to stick to the best way to manage things. Okay, any other public comments? Okay. I think we'd look for a motion to adjourn at this point.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Thank you. All right, we'll see you.